Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Happy first day. Everybody have a good day? Can I get a thumbs up? Thumbs up, round of applause. Can we get a big round of applause for your amazing teachers? I hope this is only the first great day of 5 great days, and I assume that it will be. We're glad you're here. We're glad you're here tonight. My name is David Simpson. I'm the program director here at the Work Center. My pronouns are he, him. And you are here for the first of 3 nightly faculty talks that we do every week during the summer. So if you're here for more than a week, be sure to come back because we have a great lineup all summer long. Tonight we are very, very, very excited to bring to the stage poet Donika Kelly and artist Liz Flood. Donika will read, Liz will present an artist talk with slides, and you could see her beautiful work, and then we'll do a joint Q&A with the audience afterwards. Let's see, housekeeping. Donika's books are for sale at the back of the room. Books. And she'll be signing the books after the event, so be sure to get a book signed by Donika. And there are books by others faculty that are here this week at the back of the room, and also lots of books in between the 2 halves of the gallery by faculty and fellows and other people of a long association with the Fine Arts Work Center. The gallery will be open after the event. If you haven't checked out the show, this year's summer show, which is called Edge Condition, curated by former fellow Matt Bollinger, please do check it out. It consists of work by about 20 or so former fellows. It's a wonderful show, really incredible work, so be sure to check it out. And as always, I'd like to give a big shout out to East End Books for managing our bookstore at the back of the room and in the gallery. And I would also like to give a shout out to the Arts Foundation of Cape Cod and the Cape Cod 5 Foundation for their generous support of our summer public programming. If you need to go to the bathroom, there's 2 bathrooms down the hall on the left-hand side. There's a water fountain that has a really cool thing for filling water bottles right opposite the bathrooms. And if it would make your experience better, we have assisted listening devices at the back. Just ask Fatma or Sarah at the back. They'll get you hooked up with one of those. And also, we have our lovely cushions. How many people are using cushions right now? They are proving a popular item. So if you're not using one, check with your neighbor and they'll tell you how great they are. And you just go back right now and we won't start until. Yep, we got the cushions. And then finally, let's all turn our cell phones. I'm talking to you too. Turn off your cell phones. No, all of you turn off your cell phones so that we can give our undivided attention to our wonderful faculty. And now, without further ado, I'll get off the stage, but before I do, I'd like to invite one of Donika's students up to the stage to introduce Donika. So I'd like to welcome Kiana Eberly. Thank you. Yes, to the stage.
What'd you say? Whatever. Hi, I'm Kiana. All right. Donika Kelly is the author of The Renunciations, winner of the Anisfield Wolf Book Award in Poetry, and Bestiary, the winner of the 2015 Cave Canem Poetry Prize, a Hurston Wright Legacy Award, a Kate Tufts Discovery Award. Kelly's poetry has been a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award, the Publishing Triangle Awards, the Lambda Literary Awards, and longlisted for the National Book Award. A recipient of fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts in the Lannan Residency Program. She is a Cave Canem Graduate Fellow and founding member of the collective Poets at the End of the World. Kelly earned an MFA from the University of Texas at Austin and a PhD in English from Vanderbilt University. Her poems have been published in The New Yorker, The Atlantic, The Paris Review, and elsewhere. She currently lives in Iowa City, where she teaches creative writing at the University of Iowa. Thus far, after our first day, it's really a joy to be in workshop with Donika. We're having a lot of fun, and she's really brilliant and kind in the classroom. She writes really good poems, I really like how they often like weave in mythology and like strange animals and find a way to like say the sort of unsayable thing. Yeah, the closing poem of the Renunciations is one of my like all-time favorite poems, and that little like image of the pony and the frozen ground and the closing lines like just kind of, I don't know, burrow inside of you. And it's really like a powerful conclusion to that collection, and I love it very much. Yeah, I'm excited to hear her read tonight, and really looking forward to the rest of the weekend workshop. Yeah, that's all. Welcome to Donika Kelly.
See, Sarah was like, is that good? That's good? Yeah, excellent, excellent. So I just want to reiterate something that David said, which is that the cushions. I've been sitting in these chairs for just over a week, and only recently have I engaged the cushion, and it's changed a lot. So just, take care of yourselves. I'm gonna read new work tonight. I'm gonna read a few brand new poems, including one that I wrote today alongside the wonderful members of the workshop that I'm teaching. So they will hear some of their words sort of mixed in here. But the first poem I am reading is titled Milking the Minotaur. And perhaps you are familiar with the genre of, we won't say romance novels, but the sort of monster erotica. I love that. Yeah. That makes me feel safe. So thank you for making those noises. This is for Mark. Milking the Minotaur. We all know how this ends. Well, Mark does, I do, Stacy and Mel too. It begins anywhere. Field, fjord, barn, or lean-to. Don't get bogged down in the questions. How many Europas? How many mazes? Just know there are no Theseuses, no gold, no thread, no Ariadnes later abandoned. This is not myth. This is animal husbandry. Emphasis, animal. Emphasis, husbandry. Don't ask about the milk, its essence, its provenance, the answers in the question. Meditate instead on the verb, to draw forth, to suckle, to yield. Here we are at the end, the ending, heavy in the hands, awash in the yielding. Thank you. No. Y'all will be here forever. No. I have so many poems I'm going to read. So, but thank you for the impulse. The next poem is one that I wrote today in class, and it doesn't have a title. But it is a poem for my sister. We never hunted for treasure, pirates with a parrot on the shoulder, doubloons in the chest. Never played the scene, a porch, its swing, and who's leaving? It's deep summer, pool tiles shimmering their false blue, and we are as we have been for half our lives, apart. Sister, let me know you as a woman in winter, head wrapped, long-eyed, smoking on the step outside your front door. Let me love you, though between us there's what we've done, what we haven't. Let me be content with what I know will come. Summer again, the asters, life spilling like gold at our feet. Over the winter, I had this really wonderful opportunity to go to New Zealand, and I got to do our Aotearoa, and I had the opportunity to go on a dolphin watch, and the dolphin off the coast of Kaikoura are dusky dolphin, and they're very acrobatic. So they flip and flip and flip. And I was exhausted after, which is mostly what this poem is about, remembering the dusky dolphins at Kaikoura Canyon. My second memory is of exhaustion. I get tired when I'm in a crowd, surrounded by a people whose language I don't speak. These people, at first a pod of 500, then another, maybe 200. These people who swam right up to the boat or somersaulted 1, 2, 7 times, and why? Who lingered when we whistled to them, but soon lost interest in what we couldn't say. They didn't care what we called them. They were busy flipping and leaping and roiling the water, eating maybe a little, noting intermittently the afternoon novelty, the boat, and those in wetsuits and snorkels. I stayed on the boat. I can't swim. I thought, I have no business on this boat, but there I was on the boat, delighted truly and overcome. I've been nowhere so tuned to my environment as any dusky dolphin. No, I've never known what these dolphins, these people know, but was grateful to witness, to be in the place you were from. So earlier this summer, I was in Oregon, and I took myself on some field trips, one of which was to an aquarium in Newport, Oregon. And it was 70 degrees, and I had on a hoodie. And I was like, what is this? It's like, it's summer. I want to be free. I want my arms out, which is what I've been doing lately here. And so this poem is about visiting the aquarium, I guess. I saw the Pacific, and my shoulders dropped. I can be simple like that when I made known to myself the ocean at eye level, the diving birds and their breeding plumage, sea otters smashing crab against a glass wall. Would use a rock in the wild. Harbor seals and sea lions, guileless beguile, orbit the enclosure, careen sideways, upside down, real regular. Velvet coats, silvered, speckled, and galumphing, or hinged pelvis and a bark, bite, and brown, brown, brown velvet. I've lost my color. Maybe summer will gift it back. Sun-limbed, sun-kilned, furnished. Do you hear me? Crabs in my pocket, shrimp in my pocket, fish, everything swallowed head first, breeding plumage out, tufted, horned, common as a pigeon, as many rocks as I need, embroidered tentacles, embroidered beak, coiled on the facade, Great Pacific in black and gray, shaded, stippled, bullseye, bullseye, baby. My color back, glint of gold, sunfall on the water, my pleats belled, bare on my neck. I'm trying to claim it all while I can. Also in Newport, Oregon, are sea lions, which are, I love them. They're very loud. They smell. And this particular group of sea lions, they told us that when we see them sort of that far north, it's usually just a group of all male sea lions. Like they just like pile up together because the female sea lions are still south, like in California. So sea lions hauled out Newport, Oregon. Have we wound the cord tight enough, beloved? Stretched in our parting that which had become slack in companionship. I ask only because this colony of sea lions hauled out on the dock, piled and heaving in the sun, rolling their faces on one another's hips or scratching with one leathered wing wherever they can reach, a single sex of bark and bellow, rattle and rasp. They make living look good. I ask because isn't this luxury, this wealth of a body capable of sliding over another's, of filling the air with scent and sound? I want to be of their number with you, a colony of two, hauled out, gleaming. Self-portrait as a body, a sea. I am a body schooling, a ball of fish flashing in many in these early days of feeling, of love. When I learned hours ago of fish songs that swell like bird song in the morning, how they foghorn or buzz for food or mates or space, I thought, now aren't I a humming thing? Yes, you say, a body of oceans and marvelous. And the sea anemone in me, growing on the wreckage of an old ship, can they grow that way, I wonder, on an ending? Still, this bright and tentacled anthozoan polyp which reaches and filters whatever it needs from this strong current, and the current, too, that carries the sea cucumbers, the rough mammals, the life, both vertebrate and invertebrate, even the batfish, the black jewfish, and the pteropontid. It all swells and breaks in me like a chorus at dusk. So this next poem I wrote here in 2017 in Gabby Cavalcaresi's workshop. I talk about this workshop a lot. It was like so wonderful. You remember Wendy, right? It was just like, it was so great. Gabby is like such an expansive, generous teacher. But this poem has I have like 3 poems with the same title, and they're all just like kind of floating around. But right when we arrived in Provincetown that summer, there was like a full moon. And I was just like, like a true poet. I was like, And Gabby asked us right at the beginning, what were we struggling with in our poetry? Like, what challenges were we facing? And I was really struggling to be clear and have music. Like, that was what I named. And I said to them, you can't, like, The Moon Rose Over the Bay, I had a lot of feelings. That's not a poem. But it's a really good title. So this is The Moon Rose Over the Bay. I had a lot of feelings. I am taken with the hot animal of my skin, grateful to swing my limbs and have them move as I intend, though my knee, though my shoulder, though something is torn or tearing. Today, a dozen squid dead on the harbor beach, one mostly buried, one with skin empty as a shell and hollow feeling, and though the tentacles look soft, I do not touch them. I imagine they were startled to find themselves in the sun. I imagine the tide simply went out without them. I imagine they cannot feel the black flies charting the raised hills of their eyes. I write my name in the sand, Donika Kelly. I watch 18 seagulls skim the sandbar and lift low in the sky. I pick up a pebble that looks like a green egg. To the ditch lily, I say, I am in love. To the Jeep parked haphazardly on the narrow street, I am in love. To the roses, white petals rimmed brown, to the yellow-lined pavement, to the house trimmed in gold, I am in love. I shout with the rough calculus of walking. Just let me find my way back. Let me move like a tide come in. Confronted with the argument of your body. Soaring, well-measured. I consider yielding. I consider presenting my own body, also soaring, also well-measured, not in counter, but in echo, in mirror, beloved. I consider a future in the same space, the rough geometry, as you say, of my body in the periphery of your gaze, the body as formula, as proof, as theorem, some small resolution to a family of questions of distance. First, the animal I am, the approximation of God and machine that aches and aches when we are apart. Then the practice of managing my limbs, tumbling in space, breathing, my skin that burns until it is covered or itches and must be born because it cannot be exchanged. Then your body, in narrow resolution, in high definition, the moment we return to one another, the only boundary, skin, revelation, and ecosystem, what I found there in the loam and the damp. Of course, I'm talking here about fucking. Shattered as I have been on the crest of wanting to be inside you, I'm talking, of course, metaphysically, how every part of you feels against my tongue, how you close around me, another way of saying that when I am inside you, I am no longer tumbling, but an animal bass and humming, free from the conceit of reason. I took a workshop a couple of winters ago with poet Lauren Hunter through this organization called Night School Bar, and it was great. And the theme was magic. I was like, I don't know anything about magic. I don't think I believe in magic, but I was like, let's just be in the class. And Lauren, for one of the prompts, gave us, just put on the screen, because this was on Zoom, put on the screen some cards of like major feminist writer figures from this deck, and I need to find out the name of the deck. But these were like the major arcana of this particular deck, and we were asked to choose one of the cards and write a poem into the idea maybe of that person. So this is major arcana. I've done today what I know best, struck out with a soft heart in the day's wet heat, unseasonable this weather, unreasonable this longing, yet both, one alongside the other, companions for the day's practice. A praise song to youth and I love you, I miss you to my heart, bread broken with two women, not mirrors of me or one another, but resonances. Oh, Audrey, At times I have called on you as others might, a power higher than their own. O Lord, who might have walked alongside me, mouth a firm line when I ask how to bear this loneliness, this ache, who might respond exquisitely, with excellence, with chaos, with whatever yellow light you've got. Calling Marfa for E. There was the day. The forsythia at your fence, a conflagration of yellow, the sun, a more obvious conflagration of yellow, and spring just finding us there in the full bore of the day. The flowers, the sun, my belly full, and you, dear friend, temperate as the breeze. I want to call you to sound the distance like my grandfather who, as a child, stood on his front porch, hollered through the woods to his friend a mile, he says, away, who would call back, echoing in the pine. He's an exaggeration, my grandpa, but you and I, we put in the hours on my sadness, fall leaching into winter, the winter, the winter, twin poles of my desire to be or not, opening into a field where I walked all the snares, found them full and wriggling, some bone broken by the rope, some bit bleeding from the knife. I'd call, standing out by the shed, kicking the ground gone hard with cold, the dogs rooting about, that skunk gone in for the season, and you, rarely one for calls, answered as if we were the same kind of bird. Who set the snare and with what bait, we never knew, but you helped loose what was trapped, bandaged and bind what was cut or broken. This year, the winter, the winter, the winter, trails its gray blanket into the fringe of May. I think of you in the spring soon come. Friend, should you give a holler from your porch, know that I'll call back, voice traveling the pine, no matter how deep the wood. I love you. I miss you. Please get out of my house. It's a long-term relationship poem for those of you who are familiar with this feeling. I love you, I miss you, please get out of my house. Nothing today hasn't happened before. I woke alone, bundled the old dog into his early winter coat, watered him, fed him, left him to his cage for a day closing just now. My eye drifts to the buff belly of a hawk wheeling as they do in a late fall light that melts against the turning oak and smelts its leaves bronze. Before you left, I bent to my task, fixed in my mind the slopes and plains of your face, fitted in some essential geography, your belly stretched, then soft against my own, your scent familiar as 1,000 evenings. Another time I might have dismissed as hunger, this cataloging, this fitting, this fixing, but today I crest the hill, secure in the company of my longing. What binds us stretches, a tautness I've missed, as a sapling supple misses the wind. Y'all, and then like my little file went all the way back up to milking the Minotaur, like calm down. All right, just two more. And thank y'all so much for your laughing at my jokes, for making nice noises when I'm reading. I really appreciate that. It's real. I feel like every poet, like we try to act like we're like, oh, it doesn't matter. But when someone's like, we're like, yes. It's great. No pressure for these last two poems. All right. So this next poem is called Metamorphose. I no longer desire dissolution, the spilling of my body into yours, into water or air. Don't let me in, though. I want the water still, wet, expectant, a mouthful. I want the jade kernel of knowing what my body remembers. My face rolling along your inner thigh, left cheek, mouth, right cheek, mouth, left, my whole forehead, nose, chin, rolling like some animal in moss and mint, like some animal come up for air. No, not the knowing, but the feeling of your skin, the dense muscle beneath that gives to my teeth, that yields unbroken, that cracks me like an egg. Oh, I'm yellow with want. I'm sundered, saundered, haggard in the longing. Isn't it precious? Doesn't it satisfy like a bruise stroked, like a tree's newest ring unseen? Thank you. See, this is what I'm talking about. I like this. Okay, so this is the last one, and this is a poem for Melissa, my sweetie, celebrated nonfiction writer, and I wrote this poem for her birthday. And this was after we'd had a conversation where I'd written a series of love poems to her, and I was like, "Do you like these poems about you?" And she said, "These poems aren't about me; they're about you." And I was like, "Ah!" And so I was like, for her birthday, I was like, I'm gonna write her a love poem where I acknowledge that I don't know anything. And then it was like so good. So I'm reading. so. So here we are. What is the measure for M? I catalog what I cannot capture. The sun, its ragged stumble into rock face, the precise elevation of this plateau or the next, the sea, of course, against which everything is measured. My tools are insufficient, inexact. For instance, there is no way to measure the peak against the distance from the tip of one ring finger to the other, no matter my arm's position, outstretched, limp, akimbo. For instance, there is no way to weigh the earth pushed out of earth against the gravity of my body, its bones, its sacks, its meat, and animating light. I submit. I do not constitute the mountain. This, in spite of the palette of old quilts and newly fallen maple leaves I've made at its immeasurable base. I submit. I do not constitute the field, although I have heralded its length, its width with my narrow feet, my slow step. Never mind I hear what scurries or scatters, what burrows or bounds. Never mind I raise my hand to hover the bent grass, the echinacea's bald crown, all of which withers or writhes, all of which is new or nearly the same before my foot's next fall. I submit. As with the mountain, the field. As with the field, you. Ineluctable as a season, sun ragging the rock face, your arm nearly as long as mine, your palm wider, your mouth the beginning, your eyes, of course, that against which everything else is measured. You harrow, and the summit writhes. Your broad foot falls, and the field akimbo gives up its gravity, lets loose its bodies, its bones, thrums, an animating light. Thank you.
Dang. Can we have another round of applause for Donika Kelly, please? Woo! Okay, that's a good lesson learned. Okay. So that was really wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. And now we're going to bring up Liz Flood. And to do so, I would like to invite one of our students to this stage to introduce Liz. Please welcome Carol. All these last names that are kind of hard to pronounce today. Carol Updegrave. Yeah, okay, there we are. Thank you. What?
Now I can't find your bio on my phone, of course. So let me. I know. I was going to print it out, and I'm sorry. 1 second. I very innocently accepted this position, and I didn't know how many people were going to be here. So I've had your bio up. Here you are. Okay. 1 more second. Sorry about this. You're all like building suspense here. The silence is like. Okay. Sorry about this. Okay. I found it. Don't go away now. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Good afternoon or evening, depending on your day. My name is Carol, and it's very scary to be coming up after that beautiful reading. I am delighted to be here for my first time here at the Fine Arts Work Center, and I'm very excited and rather innocently accepting the opportunity to introduce Elizabeth Flood. This was supposed to be personal. I don't really know Liz, but somehow I felt I was able to do this. I first met Liz vicariously at a concentric show. It was the name of the show at Satchel Projects in New York. My mentor and advisor runs Satchel Projects, and I just happened to be able to be in New York at the time, and I went to the show, and I was taken back by the muted tones, expressive mark making, and material that was on this canvas of a battlefield in Gettysburg. Well, I'm from Pennsylvania, and I know a little bit about Gettysburg. And I thought, that artist sounds interesting. I work in landscapes. Let me find out more. And I asked the gallery owner, how does Liz get all of that material to stick on that canvas? And she says, well, I don't really know, maybe pumice. Like, okay, maybe. So my curiosity was piqued as I am trying to be a placemaker of art. And I looked up this young artist on Instagram, and I discovered she was from Virginia. Well, I'm from Pennsylvania, not far. I paint landscapes, although I reside a little bit further away. I also discovered that she studied at the Mount Gretna School of Art in Pennsylvania, and I didn't know Mount Gretna had a school of art. I knew Mount Gretna existed because I knew of the Playhouse, but I didn't know their art school. So again, I was like, I was further excited. And then I read about Liz's bio. She's a visiting lecturer on painting at Purchase College. She earned her an MFA in painting from Boston University, her BA in History and Religious Studies from the University of Virginia. In 2019, she participated at the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture and was an artist in residence at the studios of Mass MoCA. She was awarded 2 visual arts fellowships at the Fine Arts Work Center here in Provincetown in 2021 and 2022. And most recently, her work has been shown in a solo exhibition, Battlegrounds, at Real Artways in Hartford, Connecticut. In spring of 2024, and I was fortunate to be able to go to her opening at Storage Gallery in New York. She had her first solo show in New York. Flood is the recipient of several grants and awards, including the Real Art Award, the Elizabeth Greenshields Foundation Grant, the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts Graduate Fellowship, and the Boston University John Walker Alumni Award. She has taught painting and drawing at institutions throughout the Northeast. Flood is originally from Virginia and lives and works in Beacon, New York. Her work surveys complex layers of expression within the American landscape. In her painting and drawing practice, she contends with turbulent weather conditions while responding to the environment. She witnesses the history, erosion, and constant reformation of the land and sea, carving out a site of impact and endurance through her own gestural expression. Her multi-panel paintings draw color from the atmosphere and terrain, often incorporating material from the landscapes themselves. Their gritty, relief-like surfaces connote calluses and etched stone. Flood's practice takes place on public lands, most recently at the Cape Cod National Seashore, like the nearby life-saving stations, which once kept watch for shipwrecks on sandbars. Flood keeps vigil over turbulent and vital topography, creating an entropic interpretation of the landscape today. And if you take a visit to the gallery, you will find one of her paintings there in the gallery and notice her mark making. And as I was able to go to her debut solo show in New York, I asked her, well, are you going to be teaching anywhere else? I cornered her, and she didn't think so, and I don't always get to be here. And after applying to several artist residencies in the Northeast, I think 10 of them, and they all said no, I decided, well, the stars are aligned, and I will make this happen. So here I am to witness firsthand mark-making, material application, and unique compositions. And I am very happy to be able to introduce Liz, a rich artist who excavates landscapes, expressively creating stories of place while creating a continuum of history. And after today's work, as we were excavating our own rubbings of the landscape, I think I will not be disappointed, and I look forward to learning together and growing together as a group. Thank you very much.
you. Thank you so much, Carol. Good? Okay. Thank you. That was really amazing to have one of my students introduce me. Such an amazing group. Let me just start my timer so I don't go on for too long here. Give me a second. Okay, great. Thank you, Fine Arts Work Center, for inviting me to come back and teach. This is my second summer teaching here. I'm thrilled, and it's been a really fun day so far, and I can't wait for the rest of the week. Oh my gosh, those poems. What a thrill to get to go right after that. And so, seriously, so moved by that relationship with the land and the body and the way that those two things intertwine in your work. And I feel like it's a natural transition here. It's amazing. So thank you for sharing your words. Okay, so the way this is going to work, I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes, and I want to give you all a sort of overview of my practice as it relates to the landscape, expression, and endurance, and end by showing you some new work. So yeah, let's get right into it. Here we go. I can do this. I'm training my whole life for this moment. Okay, we're good. So I'm going to start out with a brief video to give you a sort of sense of what an average day of painting might look like. This is out at Race Point Beach in the middle of the winter when I was here as a fellow, and I made a whole body of work around Race Point. And you can see I have my setup, I have my easel, I'm hiking or driving my materials out to the places I'm working, and really working with the environment to figure out how to just stand up. You know, I'm tying down sandbags, weighing things down to be able to withstand the elements, and that sort of adapting to the environment around me is a really important part of my practice. Like, what can I learn from these places? Not only logistically to make the paintings, but on a kind of personal level. So this is a photograph of the inside of my former studio here at the Work Center, which is now our classroom. This amazing full circle moment. And so you can sort of get a sense of the scale of the work. And I was standing up above on the berm of the dunes and then standing down on the beach looking out. And I bring together these multiple vantage points to create a kind of turbulent cycle of the landscape that looks in many directions at once. And here's the painting a little bit closer. So as Carol said, my work sort of excavates layers of history and environment and weather, sometimes violence embedded in the land. And through painting, I'm really trying to bear witness and feel what the land is feeling and have painting be this vehicle to sort of carry that, carry those lessons learned through my body in a place. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about format of my paintings. So this is often how they start. I'll go into the wood shop and build surfaces often based on the sort of shape and terrain of a site. And sometimes I'll build the different canvases as I go and sort of let it unfold to see what canvas needs to come next. But the main point here is it's many different vantage points of a same site, often like at different elevations coming together into one composite painting that offers a new sort of vantage point into the landscape. This is a photo of the back of one of my paintings here at PAM with my fellow friends, Christy and Georgia, helping me install the armatures on the back. This way of thinking about the landscape as a stratified, kind of stacked place really came about in graduate school at Boston University. I started making these paintings in the Quincy Quarry, south of Boston. Anyone been there? Yeah. All right. And it's this amazing site that used to be a granite quarry. Then it was disused in the 50s, became this sort of swimming hole, site of mischief, mafia, hiding cars in the water, all that. Everything a quarry does is there. And then in the early 2000s, there was the big dig in Boston where they excavated new highways and tunnel systems, and all that dirt filled the quarry. And then now it's a public park, and it's covered in graffiti, and people go rock climbing there, you can go hiking, and it's just this amazing site where there's so much history. You can still see the dynamite tracks on the rock, and it sort of evidences the kind of extraction of the earth, the intense sort of violence of that. You have the Quincy Harbor skyline far out where you can see the buildings built from that rock. There's these layers of expression that are often very vulnerable in the graffiti. Really interesting place where you could really see those layers of history. So I started making paintings there. Still thinking about those different vantage points. I was schlepping all my gear out there and painting through the winter and spring. Some artists I think about a lot, especially as it relates to format in painting, are Diego Rivera. When I think of his work, I think of history painting, sort of monumental depictions of landscape and the people who move through them and who have moved through them. And his frescoes, I of course look to them for format, but also I think there's a lot to be learned about the sort of often problematic hierarchies that exist within these paintings. There's so much to sort of read into in terms of labor and land and extraction and even this sort of like heavenly strip up top where the mountains are. They're so embedded with sort of power structures and struggles in history. Julie Meritou is also someone I think about a lot. If Diego Rivera is thinking about stacked landscape in a kind of up-down way, I feel like Julie Meritou is in like a backwards-forwards way, sort of buried, kind of almost transparent layers of a place. And I also think of her work as history painting and as landscape painting. And she's often bringing together languages of migration and movement and symbols like flags that you can't quite make out, but they feel like flags and symbols we might recognize. And they really feel like trying to wrap something around an entire civilization in one painting. They're incredible. And in terms of format, I also think a lot about Sienese altar painting. This is a painting by Duccio, and I had the chance to study abroad there back when I was a student, so these paintings are sort of baked deep in my psyche, and I'm interested in how this painting physically in the world is a sort of site of communing. Maybe a painting as a site of, I don't know if worship is the right word, I think communing is, as something you go to spend time with and believe in something. And in terms of format, there's this sort of strip on the bottom, which is called a predella, which indicates a sort of narrative sequence. So I think about these paintings a lot, and the scale of them is very similar to my own work. Communing. So back when I was a graduate student, I was making these paintings of a tree in the park behind my studio in Brookline. And I made dozens of paintings of this tree, sort of followed it throughout the fall, throughout the winter. A big snowstorm came, a branch fell. I painted the branch as it was, getting buried in the snow, decomposed. And right around this time, my mother passed away. And I somehow felt like painting this tree was a way to almost like prepare for her death. It was really intense and eerie, the way that sort of life and art and my paintings were sort of coinciding. And so once I came back from her funeral to go to for grad school, there was this red bow at the base of the tree. Like, you can't make it up. It was just sitting there, like from Valentine's Day off of someone's wreath or something. And I was like, okay, this feels like a sign. So I staked it down with camping stakes and returned again and again, just all through the winter, sort of grieving and feeling my way through, and in this kind of processional way. And then a year later, I came back and painted, let's see if it works, yes, painted this center canvas and came back to my studio and compiled them all together, which was not the original intention, but it felt like it was sort of meant to be. And this is, I mentioned this painting because I feel like in my sort of growth as an artist, it was this moment when that intersection of life and being in the landscape and the painting itself felt like they were all just so locked into one another. And I built this kind of trust in painting that is like stronger than anything else that I've ever felt. And yeah, I haven't stopped since, and painting gets me through a lot, and I'm so glad I have it there as this sort of vehicle of expression and communing. I want to transition into this body of work, which Carol mentioned, that I made at Civil War battlefields in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and Chancellorsville, Virginia, which is very close to where I grew up. And I think about communing not only in terms of communing with lost loved ones or other people, but also in terms of communing with specific places for different reasons. And what does it mean to sort of bear witness somewhere in all of the sort of stories, good and bad, that it has to tell? So I made this body of work starting in the build-up to the last presidential election in 2020, and went to these sort of contested, literal battleground states to make paintings in these incredibly charged, historically incredibly violent places, to see sort of where not to go. What does the landscape have to teach us collectively as people? And I think there's so much there. The first day I visited Gettysburg, it was July 4th, which coincidentally is an anniversary of one of the days of the Battle of Gettysburg, and there was like this really intense alt-right rally, and I was like, what is happening? History is repeating itself right here. Meanwhile, the sort of scars in the land are evidence of everything, and so I want painting to be a way to sort of bear witness. So I was making these drawings, situating myself in the battlefields, and they're really intense to make, but this is a sort of sense of what my setup would look like. There's a kind of urgency to drawing. It's portable. I can get in and out real quick. And I like that the only way through it is more, just sticking with something and figuring it out. And this is a painting I made sort of later in that body of work, right before I came to Provincetown, in August in Chancellorsville, Virginia, of a battlefield there. And I started to mix site material from the place into the paintings. So I was, pulling up the grasses. The paint itself in my paintings recently is very thick. It's almost like sandpaper if you were to touch it. I'm mixing pumice powder and sort of gritty, abrasive material that I have to literally fight with and dig in and gouge through and build up. And I wanted to see what would happen if I sort of implicated myself in this way, where I had to sort of take from somewhere and put it in, and what does that feel like? And it sort of felt like building up a kind of nest or a web or some kind of resilient shield that was, it was a very interesting process. And this is a picture of the place. So the format of the painting, I was thinking about the actual kind of topography there. It has this sort of undulating high point, low point, high point, low point, high point. And so I worked my way through this field, and depending on where I was standing, I was either super exposed, couldn't see what was coming. There were these thunderstorms looming over the hill I couldn't see until they were right there. I had to sort of feel my way through. Or I could be up high seeing everything at once, and I was interested in this sort of power dynamics and vulnerability of those positions. And I took out the color of the sky. And I wanted to make a painting that felt as humid and heavy as that season in that place. Okay. Artists I was thinking about and still think about are Anselm Kiefer, of course, the sort of weight of the material and the weight of the history sort of meeting in the paintings. Mark Bradford, this is a painting that's at the Hirshhorn Museum in Washington. It's this massive panoramic painting, which its source imagery is a painting that lives in Gettysburg of the Battle of Pickett's Charge. And in Bradford's process, I think he's thinking a great deal about strata and history and place, but there's this kind of excavation that happens of the painting itself, where he's pulling up rope or digging into material and removing these layers to get to this sort of history revealed underneath. And Sally Mann's photographs I think about a lot. A fellow native Virginian. This is a photo of Fredericksburg battlefield, which is really close to where I grew up. And since she's bringing her camera out into the elements, sometimes a gust of wind will interfere with the chemicals on the plate and create these almost like ghostly effects that feel, like they're haunted or sort of charged in this way. So I think about her work a lot, especially when I'm drawing. In this second to last section, we're going to get into Provincetown. So during my time in Provincetown, I was here for 2 winters from 2021 until 2022, or 2021 until 2023. And I think about the landscape as like an expressive body. It's so full of movement. It has so much to say. It's violent, it's intense, it's fast. And this is these are 2 photographs I took at the same point, all the way out at Race Point by the lighthouse. Has anyone been there? It's this amazing point of convergence when it's all the way out at the end of the Cape. Sand is depositing there. It's getting bigger and bigger. There's a lighthouse there that's like keeping watch. And it was this amazing point of like things, just everything happening at once. And I'd be out there through the winter. I'd drive my truck out. And I was lucky enough to see North Atlantic right whales like all winter. There's like 200 of them in the world. And they happen to hang out at the end of Race Point. Simultaneously, a whale skull washed up when I was working on my paintings there. So I have all sorts of animal encounters and try and learn from them too when I'm painting. Here's another painting I made out at Race Point. Really thinking about the horizon here, just how infinite and wide the beach feels, and trying to kind of capture the turbulence and really violence of the ocean. Also, its vulnerability. With sea level rise, like, I don't want to take any of it for granted. So I feel like when I'm painting, there's this reciprocal, like, keeping watch over it, but also the place sort of keeping watch over me. We're kind of locked in this thing together. Here's a detail. This is an installation view of my solo show at Storage Gallery, which is up until July 20th. So if you're here, you probably won't get there, but it's in Tribeca. But little plug, but you can sort of see the sense of scale and how the work at these different sites might relate to each other in terms of the American landscape and what that means right now to me. It's a painting of Death Valley up top. When I think about landscape as this sort of expressive body, of course, I think of Joan Mitchell and her relationship of her own body, her memories of land, of abstraction, all sort of meeting on the surface of the painting. She famously says, "I carry my landscapes around with me," and I think about that a lot. You can sort of feel the energy of hemlock trees through her gesture. This is a painting of the dunes I made over the course of, this is like probably the longest term landscape painting I've made. It was from like February through July. I found ways to keep coming back, and I wasn't done with the painting yet. And something I think a lot about when I'm painting is endurance, this idea of feeling the elements, of feeling the weather, and the same thing that's like the wind that's hitting me, it's hitting the painting, it's hitting the place, and we're all kind of locked in together. And what can I learn through that encounter? What stories does the land have to tell? What lessons of resilience and endurance? Here's another painting of Race Point. I was thinking about the curvature of the land and started to bring together these different vantage points, but what happens if they take on the shape of the place? So this has been an exciting direction I've been experimenting with, and it started to feel like the whale skull. I saw the whale skull when I was working on this painting. I was like, amazing. Can't make it up. Here's a drawing I made at the same site. I was literally rotating the whole thing so the horizons are upside down and twisting, and it started to feel more turbulent and disorienting in a way that felt closer to the place. Like the stable horizon line of the ocean painting was sort of letting me down somehow. So this was my answer. And I'll end on the most recent paintings I've made. And this is a painting of the Hudson River in Beacon, New York. And any Metro North riders in the room? Yeah, you know this mountain. It's Storm King Mountain. And I've made a bunch of paintings there, and I've been thinking about the sort of intensity of that river. It's almost like it's moving. But a friend of mine, she told me that the difference between the river and the ocean is the river just passes you right by, but the ocean meets you. And I keep thinking about that. And I've been standing up high on this lookout point and looking down, and I don't know, there's so much activity and motion. This is still very new to me, the language around this work, but I'm not done here. You can see these train cars going across on the other side of the river in Newburgh that are like a mile long, and it's just hundreds of Amazon cars and barges filled with gravel and who knows what else, and it's just all this kind of industrial activity churning around the river. I've been thinking a lot about George Bellows, who made paintings around the same site at the turn of the century, and the technology has changed, but the river is sort of the thing that stays the same. So I was looking at, I don't think it's this painting, but there's a few of these in the Met, and I was like, I've seen those colors. It's this strange sort of familiarity. Here's another painting I made there where I started it at sunset, and then rotated it into night through the winter. So still thinking about that kind of disorienting horizon. And this is a painting I made almost exactly a year ago when I was staying at a dune shack here in Provincetown and looking out to the ocean and painting through the night from sunset to sunrise. And there's something that happens at night, I was talking about communing earlier, where like I'm keeping watch, I'm staying vigil, which I'm always doing, but like I can't see, so I have to rely on my senses and just sort of trust what it is I'm doing in a way that's very different when I can see what I'm doing. And I think that's the last image. Oh, here's a detail. I kept seeing the same boat come by every night, and it would just be so dark, and then when the boat would come by, I'm like, all right, this is my window. I get that beam of light for about an hour as it just curves all the way around Race Point, so hopefully I'll go back. And then here's another night painting I made in the dunes. Much more stable. Thank you.
That was amazing. Thank you, Liz Flood. So provocative. We're going to do a little Q&A. Just a reminder that we are live streaming the Q&A, so please wait if you have a question for Fatima or Sarah to come to you with a microphone so our listeners and viewers at home can hear your questions. And with that, does anybody have a question for our amazing faculty?
I have a question.
Oh,
Is that okay?
I also have a question.
Okay.
So
Let's get it started. As you were reading, one thing I was paying attention to was like, or I found myself asking somehow was like, who is this for? And there was something, especially the work you were making with the sea lions, that felt sort of like journalistic or like diaristic, or diaristic is the right word. And I was like, are these like almost like diary entries? And then I was thinking about like these words that feel so immediate. They feel so like in the moment. Like, what's your relationship to coming back to them later? Do you come back to them later? And like do they feel like, does that make sense?
I think so.
Help me.
Yeah, there are poems. So I was at a residency, and I was just like trying to write a poem every day. So it really was the poems really reflected what I had seen earlier that day, and I tried to take myself on field trips enough so that I had a lot of material to work with. And it's so fun to go back and look at the poems and read them, because then the poems feel like really immediate, like they feel sort of open and warm. There are other poems that I wrote I did not read that do not feel open and warm. I did not go on field trips those days. Those are from inside. So like going out, looking at, and really like looking at things, looking at animals, being in the landscape, because the Oregon coast is just gorgeous. Had an experience with a tree that I can't really talk about. It was just like, it was so beautiful. And so really what I was trying to do is like ground the poems with details.
Yeah.
Like just trying to keep them like really, really grounded, but like, and then pushing the feeling or letting those grounded details carry the feeling more than just saying like, look, I saw these things. Like when I saw the sea otters, I wasn't thinking when I wrote the poem, oh, that's like me in Iowa, the sea otters in the aquarium who are outside of their natural habitat. I wasn't thinking that, but then after reading the poem, I was like, oh, that was a part of the affinity is they should be out wild. Like they should be like using rocks and like instead of like the glass to smash things, you know? It's like there was something wrong with that picture. Even though the Oregon Coast Aquarium does really great work, they're part of that rehabilitation program and conservation program for the sea otters when Monterey Bay rehabs them and they can't be sent out. So this isn't like a knock against like the Oregon Aquarium at all. So I think that is a part of it with those poems in particular that I read. And some of them were to me. Like the one where it's like, I want my color back. I was like, that's for me, you know? But it's also fun to read. And then some of them obviously are like love poems to other people, but yeah, thank you for that question.
Thank you for answering.
And so my question for you is about the format. I had never had this thought before, but in looking at the way that you juxtapose sort of different vantage points, the painting, which you say singularly, right? You're like, this is a singular painting.
Right.
It feels like a collection. Like in the way that like poets collect or essayists collect to make one whole thing. And I'm just sort of curious about how you think about the use of the singular painting when there are so many parts.
Right. No one's ever made the connection between like a collection of poetry or short stories, and I love that. I really do think of it as one singular thing, but each individual like canvas within the painting, it's happening one at a time. And there's a kind of chance reveal of how it relates to the next one. So I'm not sort of predetermining what happens. It's kind of like an exquisite corpse in a way, like, okay, let's see how things connect. Like, how does this cloud end up connecting with the ground here? Or I'll move canvases around and see like what sort of feeling or sort of structure within this place, what exists that I don't even know yet. And oftentimes that happens through the kind of chance connections of things where like clouds become ground and clouds become ground. And I'm like, of course, that's what it feels like to be there. But if I planned that ahead, it would be sort of like I couldn't, you know what I mean? So it's sort of letting it guide me through and seeing what it has to tell me later once it's back in the studio and I can see them all together. Yeah. Does that make sense?
That's great.
Yeah, good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
And my question comment is for Liz. Liz, the other day when I came into the gallery was my first introduction to your works. And so the first thing I thought and when I saw was that great rhythm and energy that makes the painting bigger than itself. It's bigger than the small format that it is. But seeing it here in Provincetown too, I thought, oh, she's continuing the tradition of Provincetown painting, because in that I see markings of like that Hawthorne and Friedman, and then and Kiefer too. So there's all this energy in your works and hope, but there's also a dark side to it that I get when I look at a Kiefer. So does that come from? And you explained it better in your presentation that you're not painting the sunny landscape, the happy landscape. You're painting what's going on around you in all different ways, the good and the bad. But I do see, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's like a thread through your painting that I see even in early, like in later Homer works, where he's painting rocks and he's painting logs, but then the paint is the log. As you add objects into yours, so that the actual paint becomes the subject. You're not painting the image of the subject. The paint is the subject. Yeah.
Right.
and you take this as a compliment. You don't appear to me to be a graduate of what I've known in the past of BU's school. It was more, when I was in our school, it was more academic. And does John Walker teach there?
No, he retired a few years before I went
Oh,
there.
but you had him.
No.
No.
No, the current chair of the MFA painting department at BU is Josephine Halverson, who's been like an amazing mentor to me and such an incredible teacher who actually is from Cape Cod originally. And, but her work is, there's a sort of intellectual sharpness to the work that has really helped me as a student. And I think one of the most helpful things about going to BU for me was like really digging into this relationship between material, like what it is you're using and what it is you're painting. Not that it needs to be an image of something, but that's something that I felt like I really took from my time there. And so, what you were saying about like material, like the rock is it's not a painting of the rock, like the painting is the rock kind of. I think about it less in terms of painting like objects, but it's more like a painting of experience. Like the painting is almost like a byproduct of, it's more than that, but it sometimes feels like this like accidental thing that happened through being present somewhere for long enough and like having the tools that are my materials that I know how to use. So it's not like premeditated in that way. It's very responsive. And it's this kind of buildup and accumulation that happens. And I think most of the time there's a kind of heaviness to the work, but it just sort of happens. Of course I'm thinking about all sorts of stuff, like what did I have for lunch? Like what's going on in the news? Like, are we all gonna die? Like, it's just, there's so much, like, I'm kidding, but I'm not. And I think for me, painting is a place that can hold a lot. And the land as well is this sort of like conduit to just feel through. And so a friend of mine that was a fellow with here, Mark, he was like, we did a studio visit and he was like, Liz, these aren't paintings of the landscape. These are paintings of Liz painting the landscape. And I was like, oh, that's kind of like what you were saying about, I was like, damn it. So, but he's not wrong. Like the work is really expressive, and they're not only sort of paintings of places, but they're also they're an internal emotional landscape. Does that answer your question?
Yes,
I went on a side road.
No, thank you. And congratulations on your sale.
Thank you.
Hi, Liz, could you please speak a little about your exploration of representation and abstraction? Like, how have you traveled on that spectrum?
Well, I think about, abstraction in painting as like a series of, I'm really paring it down to what in my mind is at its core, and it's shapes, colors, marks, and how do they all interact with each other on a relatively 2D plane that is sometimes rectangular. And this combination of shapes and colors and material and surface comes together to make something that can only exist in a kind of illusionistic space in a painting, So if I'm painting like a distant landscape, it's not a landscape, but it's an illusion of one. But it's not so different than like a Rothko painting or something of like this color next to that color next to that color, where these three things are like in relation to each other and creating an illusion of space. So I think about that. I think my work is definitely related to like abstract expressionism, like the abstraction within a gesture, how like a mark, it's not like, I don't think of my work as illustrative. I oddly don't think of it as representational. I think it's like, it's not trying to stand in for something. I think that's because it's so expressive. I think of it as more kind of experiential than representational. Does that make sense? But my own sort of painting background, I learned how to paint from life. really well. And, that's something I worked at. But I think over time, I feel much more sort of aligned with this sort of gestural abstraction that happens to occur through this like close observation of something or far away observation. But I feel like I'm like someone told me once I'm like a landscape painter in an abstract expressionist body or something like that. I'm like, yeah, like it's like the work is expressive, and I'm working in this language which is abstract, that is color, material, gesture, and it happens to coincide into something we can recognize. But I think a lot about abstraction, so thanks.
Donika, you mentioned that a couple of years ago you were in a workshop here, and there were two things that concerned you about your work. And one was clarity, and the other was
having music. So
having
being
music.
clear, but it's still sounding like a poem,
Right.
as opposed to something prosier. And it's because it's risky. That measure of clarity, I think, is really risky if there isn't something undergirding it. And I'm not good at hearing meter, so it's tricky.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering how you, like, what were some of your strategies and how you work towards that?
Yeah, so I look to the poets who do it in ways that I find really exciting. So Natasha Trethewey is one of those poets. Marie Howe is another. There are moments in Gwendolyn Brooks that feel that way, where it's like it feels really clear, but the momentum of the sentence is interesting and exciting. And what I tried to do in my own work was really move into the space of repetition. I tried to use repetition in ways that help sort of create a sort of sonic scaffold. So sometimes that was really helpful. And I don't know, I just tried to have fun with the words. I tried to make sounds that were pleasing to me in sentences that made sense, which is tricky. I don't know. I feel like it has been really hard, and sometimes that can lead me into a narrative space. And I don't always like working in a narrative space because it's not as fun. I really like being in a lyric space where I'm doing something with sound and time and image. So then sometimes I go the other way where maybe it makes less sense. But it's fun to say out loud and to read aloud. But just I try to let myself have a lot of space to just play around and do whatever feels good. And it was helpful. Gabby's question was really helpful because I was able to name in the workshop space something that have been thinking about just to myself, and saying it out loud was helpful. I was like, oh, I think there are people who do this in ways that I find really pleasing. So why don't I go see what they're up to? And I'll just say this last thing. One of the things that Natasha Trethewey does that I think is really cool is she'll have she'll double up forms. So it'll be a sonnet, but it's a blues sonnet, right? So it's using the blues format. And I can't tell you exactly what that is, but if you look it up, you can find it. There's a very specific form, the blues poem form, but she pairs that with a sonnet. So there's just it's fun. It's just and the feeling, it really carries that's such a mournful poem. It's from the book that won the Pulitzer, Native Guard. There's some really beautiful sonnets in there that are sort of doubling up in that way on some different forms. So sometimes I try to do that, but I'm not as good with the formal stuff. I'm working slowly at it because there's plenty of time. Thank you for your question.
I was delighted to hear the accepted challenge, milking the Minotaur. But I wanted to ask a question really in relation to assignments, about giving yourself assignments and how that kind of functions as part of what you do as a poet. And I thought that would be helpful for students to hear as well.
Yeah, I will take nearly any prompt that someone gives me. If someone's like, let's write a poem that does this, I'm like, I'll try. Because the stakes are, in fact, so low. If the poem isn't good, it's okay. I can always write another poem. And I was saying I think I said this to my class, like, it's different if you write a novel that's not good. Like, that's much more difficult to be like, well, I'll just write another one. I was like, oh, I can, like, if the poem doesn't work, it's okay. I teach undergrads at the University of Iowa, and I often give them writing exercises, and I'll do the exercises with them, as I did with my class today, and as I will continue to do the rest of the week. And if they give us, if my students give us a prompt, I'll do the prompt alongside them. There's something really sweet about that communal kind of writing, where I'm free. There's like a freedom in it. Whereas like it might not work, but it's okay. And it might not, and then it may somehow veer into the real work, like my heart work, in ways that are surprising, and so it gives me some ways in. Did you have a thought, sweetie?
I wanted you to tell them how you came into the room and asked me to give you 10 words, and then you...
Oh, yeah, I did. So this was, so I gave Melissa an assignment.
She didn't explain it, though.
Yeah, I was, when I was at the residency in Oregon, I was like, give me 10 words. I was like, good nouns and verbs, please. I was like, I would really like that. And that's what we did today in class. Like, we made a list of everyone gave us a noun, a verb, and something blue. And I was like, just pick 2 from each column and write a poem about something. I don't know. I feel like there was like another element, another beat to it. Maybe it was like reaching for or towards something. But I love the opportunity. I love being in classes. Like, it's so fun to just write, like someone else delivers the prompt. It's great. So what Mark did, we were having a conversation with a pal, Stacy, and we came to the phrase milking the Minotaur. Maybe that was the title. Maybe that was the title of the book.
That's the title of that series of pornographic fantasy novels.
That's right. That is the title of the series of pornographic. This is ridiculous. And Mark was like, "We're going to do it. We are going to write the poem Milking the Minotaur." And he wrote down in his notebook that he wrote a contract, and he signed his name, and then he gave me his beautiful fountain pen, and he was like, "You sign your name." And I was like, well, I guess I'm on the hook for this Milking the Minotaur, as is Mark. So Wednesday. Wednesday. And it's just fun. I think that's just something that's so fun, because I think that we can get so serious about like writing poems, and sometimes it's just fun to be silly and just like try to make something that we wouldn't have made otherwise. Like, I just love it. Like, it's a great time. So all of you taking classes this week, I'm just like, yes. I wish I had thought to take a class last week. I really bobbled there. So I don't know if that answers your question, Mark, but that's what I was thinking.
Hi. Thank you. It was great to hear those poems, and then to watch and then to view those landscapes. I just thought it really worked well together. So thank you so much. I was thinking about Native Guard, which includes some really haunting landscapes of Civil War battlefields, which when we were looking at those particular works from Gettysburg, I was thinking about the heaviness of the paint in your paintings and wondering if there's like a specific heaviness around certain sites, including like Civil War battlefields. I was also curious, like, if you've done work outside of the U.S., or does that make sense? Or if you're thinking a little bit about like the national or American dimensions of the landscape.
I've really been thinking about the sort of American dimensions of the landscape for now. I haven't painted outside of the U.S. yet. I think at some point I will, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around what's right here for now. I want to paint the Pacific Ocean at some point. I feel like, as someone who grew up in the East Coast, I'm so sort of Atlantic-centric. So I think that's in the future. Like, what does that ocean feel like? What has it seen? You know, it's all sort of one body. It's a good one?
It's a great ocean.
Okay. It's a good... I've heard there's sea lions. But noted. So yeah, I really am thinking about like the American landscape in particular, and I'm only just taking small bits and pieces of that. Yeah, and in terms of like the heaviness of sites, I feel like it's everywhere. It is, like even where we're sitting right now, like what has been here, who has been here, and not just heaviness, but there's also, joy and things that are, but like anywhere you stand is incredibly charged. And I don't take that lightly, not to take myself too seriously, but I take that responsibility very seriously. And just want to witness as sort of honestly as I can with a place and just try and listen. And so battlefields, the Atlantic Ocean, like they're sort of one in the Hudson River, like they're all sort of one and the same to me. Like there's nothing neutral about, not that you're saying that it is, but there's nothing neutral about that. There are all these sort of intense bodies that have endured a great deal of movement and violence and change and weather, and we're just passengers,
Hi, Liz. Thank
Hi.
you. Your question was about like diaristic to, it's Donika?
Yes.
Then it made me think about your paintings, and you've said the word like bearing witness, or the phrase bearing witness a lot. So do you think of your practice as like journalistic or like recording, or are there moments where you're aware of inserting yourself into the painting versus just recording something? I thought I might have seen some like hidden messages in some of the storage paintings. And so I just didn't know if I was like reading into it, or if it was accidental, or how much you're aware of it and putting it in the painting, or if it just happened, or, kind of what that's like.
Yeah.
Like, how much are you just like seeing and recording versus I'm here in this moment as a human witnessing. So like, I don't know if that makes sense. Like,
It does.
I guess like portraiture.
Yeah. I don't really think of the word recording like at all in relation to my practice. I think it's too like removed. It's too sort of, there's a thing between us and like a lens or something. And so I think I am, it sounds so intense saying inserting myself, but like, to use the phrase you said, but I am sort of maybe implicating myself more in the place or encountering it in this way that's very physical. And that, I don't think it's, I don't know if diaristic is the right word, but it's certainly like expressive. Like it is an expression, like from myself through this place. We're in this thing together. And, sometimes I do, like you mentioned, seeing sort of words in the painting. Sometimes I'll write messages that are sort of camouflaged in things, like message to someone. And sometimes they'll get buried. But it's sort of all fair game to me, because it is this sort of encounter. And maybe that's a thought that came to mind. I'm thinking about someone, and I'm going to put this sort of intention in the painting. And it might get covered, it might get buried, but it's, I don't know, it's a very sort of personal encounter. Does that answer your question?
So maybe another thing I've been thinking about recently of like, I'm trying to go out into the landscape, and I've realized, I think, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, when I saw landscape paintings, I was like, well, who would want to paint a landscape? You just go outside, and that's like beautiful. Like why do you need to paint it? But I think I'm realizing there's like a sport element. Like there's like you're talking about endurance, and like, I don't know if you've played sports, but I've played sports, and I'm like, oh, there's like equipment. And maybe when you're talking about like being in, you're like in the game, like you're the player. You're not recording, you're like playing the game or something. Like maybe that's, I don't know. I like analogies. So.
I mean, I am both a twin and a Leo, so I'm very competitive. And I played sports growing up. So yeah, I think I am competitive when I'm out there for sure, and I do think the like endurance of it, but it's more like just being in the elements and like feeling the cold, and like, can you like take it, and can the painting take it? And I think that is its own sort of form of endurance and not wanting to kind of, or I think about it as like, physically, what can I learn to endure from this place? Like, can I be sort of more resilient and stronger from there, from the place? Like, what, like, how can I, does that make sense?
Yeah, like by doing this practice, you're in relationship with the space.
Yes.
And so then, like, how can you learn from it in
Exactly.
like a reciprocal way?
In a reciprocal way, but also like, there are these, like as a body, as a female body that's gone through things, like, and like what can, like, gone through traumatic things, like what can this land that has like felt violence or felt whatever, like what can I learn from that, and like how can painting be a sort of like a record of that, like transference of resilience or something, or endurance. I guess that's what I mean by that. That's sort of a roundabout way to answer your question.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Thank you.
That seems like a good place to stop. Can we have another hand for Donika Kelly and Liz Flood? I think I read that plein air painting is going to be in the 2028 Summer Olympics. I think it's really good. Start working out now. Anyway, thank you very much, Donika Kelly and Liz Flood, for a wonderful evening tonight. Remember, Donika will be signing books at the back. Please check out the gallery and Liz's painting, which is the second one on the right-hand side as you go in. You'll know it. And come back tomorrow night when we're going to hear from playwright Kirsten Greenidge and artist Joe Diggs. Here he is, yep. Come back tomorrow night. Thanks so much.